Hello and welcome to the program UFO Warning. In this episode, we're talking about some of the recent Nuforc UFO reports. That's correct, recent Nuforc UFO reports. Some of these are pretty cool, actually. This first one talks about a report that happened May 9th, 2026 in Zanesville, Ohio. It says duration 5 to 8 minutes, observers 2 over an open field, shaped disc, color dark gray, estimated size house-sized. Wow, looking out your window and seeing this thing the size of a house. Viewed from land, direction from viewer, object was southwest of us, moving northwest, angle of elevation 42 degrees, heading northwest, closest distance under 500 yards, estimated speed approximately 2 miles per hour, says a slow float, lights on object, silent house-sized bell-shaped disc with a flat bottom, dome top, square cap, a single top light, and 8 rotating lights flashing in a triangular pattern. Estimated speed approximately 1 to 2 miles per hour. My wife and I were outside on our farm in Muskingum County, Ohio, on the night of May 9th, 2026, around 11 p.m., watching the stars. The sky was clear with no clouds, and the moonlight provided excellent visibility. Out of nowhere, this object came from behind us. We never heard it approach, and there was absolutely no sound throughout the entire sighting. As soon as it entered my field of view, I immediately knew it wasn't normal. It had a sharp, well-defined silhouette against the night sky. We could clearly make out its shape in the moonlight. It was house-sized, bell-shaped, with a flat bottom, a dome top, and a small square cap at the very top that had a single light on it. 8 lights around the craft flashed in a triangular pattern as it slowly rotated. I could also make out what appeared to be windows. The object was approximately 500 yards away and was not directly overhead. It drifted slowly and steadily toward the northwest in the direction of U.S. Route 40. It crossed our 4-acre field in about 3 to 4 minutes. Based on that distance, we estimated its speed at approximately 1.5 to 2 miles per hour. It never changed speed or altitude. It simply floated across the field until it disappeared from view. The object remained completely silent the entire time. There was no engine noise, humming, prop wash, or any other sound. My wife and I independently drew sketches of what we had seen without discussing it beforehand. Our sketches matched. Recalculated speed, approximately 1.5 to 2 miles per hour, still slower than a bicycle. Conclusion unchanged. Investigative report says it occurred between 10:30 p.m. and 11 p.m. May 9th, 2026. Location approximately 2 miles west of Zanesville, Ohio, near the intersection of Whites Road and U.S. Highway 40. Conditions at the time of the encounter. The weather conditions were fair with a slight breeze from the southwest and no precipitation. Moonlight was a significant factor. A waning gibbous moon provided ample illumination, and the witness described the area as well lit by moonlight. Visibility was excellent. The witness stated there is very little light pollution, allowing for an exceptional view of the night sky. Nautical twilight, 10:09 p.m. Astronomical twilight, 10:57 p.m. On June 7th, 2026, I conducted an extensive telephone interview with the reporting witness. He is a 28-year-old mechanic who lives on a small farm with his wife. She was present with him and also witnessed the events described below. The witness frequently spends time on the west-facing porch of his home watching the night sky, partly because coyotes are common in the area. On several recent occasions, he and his wife had observed lights in the sky resembling stars that would move together and then separate. On the night of May 9th, they again observed these unusual moving lights. He jokingly remarked to his wife that the aliens were coming that night. Moments later, they observed an object slowly crossing their field at an altitude of no more than approximately 40 feet above the ground. The sighting lasted between 5 and 8 minutes. The object maintained a constant, extremely slow speed as it traveled across the field. It approached from behind them before entering their field of view. Throughout the encounter, the object remained completely silent. The witness stated there were no other sounds in the area that might have masked any noise produced by the object. He described the object as big as a house. His wife was present during my interview with him and made several excited comments in the background as they recalled the object's size and unusual appearance. To better estimate its apparent size, I asked the witness to imagine the moment when the object was closest to them and to identify the smallest object he could hold at arm's length that would completely cover it. He replied that a notepad measuring approximately 9.5 by 6 inches would have done so. Both witnesses independently drew the object on a whiteboard, and both sketches were included with this report. Each drawing depicted two saucer-shaped forms joined together, with the larger section on top and the smaller section below. The witness stated that he observed 8 bright LED-like lights around the lower rim. He explained that the series of dots drawn in an inverted crescent representation represented both the arrangement of the lights and the way they flashed sequentially from right to left. We discussed the cascading taillight effect found on some modern automobiles, and he confirmed that this closely matched what he observed. The witness also stated that the object was not always perfectly level with the ground. It would occasionally tilt slightly, causing the flashing lights to appear to merge together before spreading apart again. He explained that his cell phone battery had died, so he asked his wife to retrieve her phone. She refused, saying there was no way she was going to stop watching the strange object. After it disappeared from view, he wanted to get into his truck and pursue it. His wife, however, was afraid of being left alone after what they had just witnessed. He decided to remain with her and their baby. I also spoke directly with his wife regarding how they ultimately lost sight of the object. She explained that there is a dense grove of black walnut trees just north of their residence. The object rose slightly and then descended on the opposite side of the grove. Her final view of it consisted of its flashing lights shining through the trees. The witness stated that he continues to think about what he and his wife observed that night. He emphasized that the experience was very real to him and unlike anything he had ever seen before. The witness is highly articulate, and based on the quality, consistency, and spontaneity of other witnesses' responses, I consider both him and his wife to be highly credible. I reviewed Flight Radar 24 records for the time and location of the sighting. There were no aircraft operating in the area during the reported time of the encounter. I also submitted a request to Muskegon County 911 call center to determine whether any additional reports of unusual aircraft or lights were received that evening. As of this writing, I have not received a response. Any additional information received will be appended to this case file. At this time, there are no known man-made or natural explanations for what has been reported. This investigation is therefore closed with the conclusion that the object observed was a real physical craft of unknown manufacture operating under the control of unknown intelligence. James E. Clarkson, investigator. Wow, that is really something. This one happened on May 11th, 2026, found it over at nuforc.org. Really cool site. It says duration 20 seconds, observers 1, location Surrey, British Columbia. Location details rooftop of a building with an unobstructed view, shaped triangle, color black, estimated size larger than an airplane viewed from land, direction from viewer northeast 47 degrees, angle of elevation 45 degrees, heading northeast, closest distance approximately 300 feet, speed unknown. A large black triangular UAP flying low over the city with no sound and no lights. I was standing on my rooftop stargazing on a very dark night. Coming directly from the northeast and flying straight toward me, I observed a very large triangular-shaped aircraft. It was completely dark with no lights at all. It appeared larger than an airplane and had a distinct triangular shape. Its surface looked like black metal, and I could see several large circular shapes on the underside reflecting the lights. The object made absolutely no noise, no humming engine or propeller sounds. It was flying much lower than a typical airplane, although it remained high enough to clear the high-rise buildings beneath it. I would estimate its speed was similar to that of an airplane slowing or landing. The speed remained consistent as it pushed overhead and continued southwest over the city. I could not see any windows or cockpit as my view was primarily from below. Once the object was about 100 feet away, I could no longer see it because its dark color blended completely into the sky. Well, now they did an investigation on this, and it says, while stargazing during the summer morning hours, a Canadian witness identified as M observed a large black triangular craft flying slowly and silently overhead. M stated that she watched the object for approximately 20 seconds before it disappeared from sight. On May 24th, 2026, at 1:30 p.m. Pacific Time, I interviewed M by telephone regarding her May 11th, 2026 UFO sighting. M stated that she observed a large black triangular craft flying over her location at approximately 2:04 a.m. local time. She claimed that she was stargazing on a rooftop when she noticed the object. The night was clear and exceptionally dark, and her view was unobstructed. According to M, the craft was an equilateral triangle with no visible engines or lights of any kind. M described the object as a matte black triangle approximately the size of a football field flying overhead on a northeast heading. She stated that the craft was completely silent and blocked out the stars as it passed over her head. She further noted that the craft appeared completely flat when viewed from both the front and the rear. With the assistance of nearby streetlights and ambient city lighting, she could clearly see the underside, which featured 3 large black circular structures arranged in a triangular pattern. M said she was stunned by the craft's size and its ability to move slowly and silently above the high-rise buildings, which she estimated were no taller than 300 feet. She added that the object looked unlike any conventional aircraft she'd observed, including airplanes approaching for landing. When the craft was directly overhead, M noticed what appeared to be an array of mismatched black metal panels that looked as though they had been welded together. She later submitted 2 drawings of the craft to help illustrate what she observed. Checks of Flight Radar 24 and Flight Aware revealed no aircraft matching the witness's description. M stated that she is familiar with commercial aircraft, private aircraft, military aircraft, and drones. She emphasized that this object was unlike anything she had ever seen before. For reference, Vancouver International Airport is approximately 33 miles from the sighting location. Royal Westminster Regiment is approximately 24 miles away. I am classifying this as an anomalous sighting, signed Keith Bickford, Nuforc investigator. Just imagine that giant triangular-shaped UFO flying over your house. What a cool sighting. This next sighting happened on February 19th, 2026. Says duration 4 minutes, observers 1. Location Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Location details at my home. Shape cigar. Color black, ? Was dark. Estimated size 2 to 3 car lengths long. Viewed from land, direction from viewer, it was coming from southern direction. Angle of elevation 60 degrees. Headed northeast. Speed, hard to say, 2 miles per hour. Steady pace, and then they think it might have been a drone. Well, let's take a look here. It had no propellers, rotors, or wings. It transformed into a bright circular orb. I think that rules out drone right there. And then a huge spotlight illuminated my entire home. I went outside because I had awakened around 1:30 a.m. and could not get back to sleep. At about 2:30 a.m., I decided to step outside. It was silent and dark. I began to hear something flying overhead, not extremely low, but low enough to be noticeable. I could not see it. It did not sound like a helicopter or an airplane, so I walked around the corner of my house onto my deck, which overlooks a creek and pond on my property, to get a better look. As it passed over my property, I could see two steady red lights that were not flashing. I live in a rural area on 2.5 acres. I stared at the object for about 15 seconds, trying to determine what it was. A drone or perhaps a very quiet helicopter. Yeah, as I watched, it morphed into a large, bright, circular orb. At first, it resembled a jelly-like blob. Then it became a perfect, luminous circle. Before I realized what was happening, my property deck and the interior of my home were illuminated by an extremely bright light for about 10 seconds. It also seemed as though it sensed my presence. I panicked, ran inside, and locked the door. I saw the object pass above my house and continue toward town. It appeared to be long, perhaps 2 or 3 car lengths. I could not tell whether it was a rectangular or cigar shape because it was so dark. I have never seen a drone that large. I considered that it might have been a search and rescue or military aircraft, but I have seen nothing on social media indicating such activity in our area. If someone had been flying a large drone with a spotlight, I believe I would have noticed the light before it was directed at my home and property. I saw no light until the object transformed into the bright round orb. The entire event happened very quickly, and I honestly felt as though I were in a movie. It terrified me. The UFO was not moving very fast, rather it traveled at a very slow, steady pace. Now, they did do an investigation here. The investigator is Keith Bickford. It says, during an early morning walk around the outside of her residence, the witness, identified as Kay, observed 2 red lights flying slowly, approximately 400 feet above her residence. Kay stated that after she observed the red lights, a huge spotlight shined down on her residence, and when it shut off, she observed a rectangular-shaped craft fly away. On 3/23/26 at 3:35 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I interviewed Kay by phone regarding her UFO sighting on February 19th, 2026. At 2:45 a.m. PST, Kay stated that she woke up that morning around 1:30 a.m., couldn't go back to sleep, so she walked around the outside of her residence. Kay then stated at approximately 2:45 she heard the sound of some sort of engine up in the air, and when she looked up into the dark sky, she observed 2 red lights. Kay added that neither of the lights were blinking, and since it was still dark, she was unable to see what the red lights were attached to. Kay stated that she felt like whatever the red lights were attached to sensed that she observed it and then morphed into a perfectly round, bright orb that shot a very bright white light down on her residence. Kay then stated that the morphing process looked like a jelly blob at first and then changed into the bright circle of light that lit up her entire house, both inside and outside. Kay added that the light lasted approximately 10 seconds and it appeared to be only focused on her residence and yard. Kay stated that there was no damage done inside or outside of the house. Kay stated that when the light was shining down on her residence, she panicked and quickly ran inside her residence to hide. Kay then stated that while in her residence, she observed the spotlight turn off and then heard the engine sound again and observed what looked like a 28-foot rectangular craft fly away very slowly. Kay added that it was too dark to see the craft very well. Kay stated that this experience shook her up quite a bit, and she couldn't eat for a couple of days. Kay stated several times that she is familiar with conventional aircraft and drones. Conclusion: during my research of Coeur d'Alene, not only is there a private airport, but also a U.S. Navy acoustic research detachment not far from Kay's residence. My drone expert contact told me that drones usually have red lights to the rear of the drone for navigational purposes. He also stated that some military or law enforcement tactical drones may just have red lights only. I am classifying this as a probable drone. Well, I have to completely disagree with that conclusion because I've yet to see a drone that transforms into an amorphous jellyfish-like glowing orb. What concerns me about this investigator and a lot of people is that folks want to put these UFOs into a clear mechanical category. Everything has to be in its own box. And I don't see UFOs that way. I see this as a UFO that was disguising itself as something else. And it's going along, and when it notices that it's been seen, it quickly reacts. You have this interface with humans, this observer effect, where suddenly it wants to change how it looks. Now, maybe that's because that's what this lady expected, or maybe it's just messing with this woman, trying to cloak itself somehow. All due respect, I don't see this as a drone at all. I see this as something making a very clumsy attempt at being a drone. And partially I based that on my own experience. And I've talked about this 100 times in my program. When I had my up-close experience with the UFO, it wasn't like anything that you would consider to be an aircraft. Looking back, it was almost like this entity had just willy-nilly grabbed stimuli out of the environment. Everything from the texture of the concrete on the highway to the underpass, the elements of the bridge, of a cell phone tower light down the road a ways, the blinking, all these different things that it could scoop up out of the environment. It's almost like you ask AI to create a random image, and that's what it did. I see that happening over and over and over with these things. So I think it does a big disservice to just label these things as a drone or a weather balloon or a Chinese lantern. It's a lot deeper than that. It looks like we have time for one more case here. This one happened on February 7th, 2026. Lasted about 1 to 2 minutes. Observers 2. Location, Behalia, Mississippi. Location details says this occurred right beside an area being cleared of trees. Unsure if relevant. Shaped triangle. And they got a photograph here. I don't know if it's an actual picture or illustration, but it's pretty wild. Color dark gray, approximately the size of a 1,200 to 1,500 square foot house viewed from land. Viewed eastbound from roughly 45 degrees to 90 degrees, angle of elevation 90 degrees, heading stationary, closest distance estimated 500 feet or less, very low. Characteristics lights on object, triangle craft hovering low over the road. My fiance and I were driving when he suddenly leaned forward and looked up. I did the same. He said, "What is that?" I had no idea. We had time to get a good look as we approached. The light was incredibly bright. I cannot stress that enough. I initially thought it might be a helicopter, but it was far too bright, and nothing about it made sense as we got closer. I rolled my window down and looked straight up at it, directly above the car. It was difficult to comprehend what I was seeing. It was a triangle hovering low, completely stationary, right above us. There were lights at each corner that were not flashing like a plane's lights. I looked up at it long enough to take it all in, but what was baffling was how little detail there was. I saw no seams, no identifying markings, no wings, no engines, and no visible propulsion system. There was zero sound. It was completely silent. I screamed for my fiancé to stop the car, but he kept going. He eventually turned around, but then the object was gone. I'm so glad someone else saw it with me, so I don't feel like I'm losing my mind. I couldn't tell if it was metallic or not. It was just a very dark gray, almost like a void. It wasn't shiny at all. The actual object and its three lights were not visible until we were directly underneath it. While approaching, all we could see was one huge, bright white light. It almost felt like it was pointing right at us, though it was hard to tell. It was suspended right over my head. I still can't understand how it made no noise. It was a surreal experience. We turned on to a parallel road to Highway 78 and backtracked, but it had completely vanished. The area is relatively flat, and there was no sign of the object in any direction. There was no noise of anything leaving, just nothing. I even climbed on top of our SUV to get a better look. That's how unbelievable the whole thing was. Regarding the size, it's hard for me to judge because I have no background in estimating distances in the sky, but I'll give my best estimate. It was low, but above the tree line, possibly twice as tall as the trees or a bit higher, but not much. I'm using familiar reference points like trees and house sizes because that's what I know. As far as we know, we did not experience any missing time, and there were no other aircraft or objects in the sky. This is by far the craziest thing that has ever happened to me. I wish I had taken a photo, but I didn't even think of it until afterward. Okay, so that picture I saw must just be an illustration. Investigative report 22726, 1400 hours. M is a 38-year-old woman who resides in Olive Branch, Mississippi, approximately 10 miles from Byhalia. The UFO sighting occurred about 3 to 4 miles from Byhalia while she and her fiance were driving toward the city on Old County Road 178. The road is one lane in each direction with a speed limit of 40 miles per hour. When asked to describe herself, she said she has held several jobs but is currently a full-time caregiver for her mother. At the time of the sighting, she and her fiance were on their way to pick up her mother from a care facility in town. The event occurred on February 7th, 2026 at about 6:15 p.m. Sunset that day was 5:35 p.m. The temperature was 46 degrees with fair weather conditions, 0% precipitation, and a 6-mile-an-hour wind from the northeast. The witness stated that the sighting took place in late twilight, so she could still clearly see her surroundings and the UFO when she got close to it. The first thing that happened was her fiancé saying, "What is that?" She looked straight ahead and saw a very bright light that appeared to be just above the roadway ahead of them. As they got closer, her fiancé slowed down. Very quickly, they found themselves directly under the source of the light. It is also possible the object moved quickly toward them as they closed the distance. She rolled her window down and looked up at the unknown object hovering right over their car. There were 3 large, extremely bright lights arranged in a triangle on the bottom of the craft. The craft itself was a very large triangle. She tried hard to see any details, plates, markings, or other features, but could see nothing except a very dark shape. She compared it to looking at a giant piece of black construction paper. The triangular UFO did not reflect any light at all, and the craft made no noise. While this was happening, she was screaming at her fiancé to stop the car. Instead, she pulled off the road onto a short side road to turn around. Once the car stopped, she opened the moonroof, climbed onto the roof of their Honda SUV, and looked in all directions, but the UFO was nowhere to be seen. Shortly afterward, they continued into town, picked up her mother, and went to dinner at Sweet Pea's restaurant in Olive Branch. They could talk about nothing else but what they had seen. She realized that triangular UFO would probably just fit inside the restaurant building. While on the phone, I looked up the business on Google Maps. Based on the size of the cars and parking lot spaces in the aerial photo, I estimate the building to be about 80 to 90 feet on the long side and about 40 feet on the short side. I also asked her to imagine holding out her hand with an object that would just cover the triangular UFO when it was fully out of view. She said a large piece of poster board would just about cover it. When asked how high the triangular craft was above their car at its closest point, she estimated no more than 500 feet. She did not hear any sound coming from the UFO. We discussed the 3 very bright lights. She struggled to find the right words to describe them using holographic, but noting that wasn't quite accurate. She described the light as intense, yet it did not seem to illuminate her or the car. She also mentioned a shimmering quality as if it contained many colors at once. Then it says, investigators note, based on numerous UFO witness interviews, this is a commonly reported aspect. Witnesses often have difficulty describing the color or quality of the lights when the UFO is close. I would describe this witness as highly articulate and very excited to recall the sighting. She repeatedly said how glad she was that someone else had seen it with her, noting it would be very hard to report without a second witness. This is a report from a highly articulate and credible witness describing a highly unconventional triangular aircraft with no known form of propulsion at 500 feet or less. This qualifies as a CE-1 close encounter of the first kind. James Clarkson. Until next time, this is UFO Warning. Over and out.